Hey there, this is Jeremy Siskind, author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano, and today, from a YouTube subscriber's request, I'm going to be talking about shared hands voicings. This is something that I talk about over a lot of chapters in my book, so this is going to be kind of a very quick overview, but of course, the place to go for a longer overview is to the book. And let me just demonstrate what this means to have shared hands voicings. So, oftentimes, we think about the left hand playing the accompaniment and the right hand playing the melody. Right? If you're playing stride piano, you're probably just going to play, if I'm playing Misty, I'm just playing a single note in the right hand. But oftentimes for sophisticated jazz pianists, they're taking also part of the chord into their right hand. So I might play, particularly in ballad styles where you want that really thick, beautiful voicing, these shared hand voicings really are the kind of industry standard. They are difficult because it's not a voicing I can give you a formula for. I can't say, okay, play the root, the third, the seventh, and the ninth. Because they're going to change with the different melody notes. Because you want to avoid doublings, which we'll get to. But if I'm already playing the third up here, I don't want to play the third of the chord down here as well. And it also changes based on where you are in the register. This same note, I'm going to have to voice differently if it's here versus if it's up here. So there's a lot of considerations. And so what I'm going to give you is more of a process than a formula. I found that most students benefit most from writing out 5 or 6 versions of this until you start to kind of figure out how it's supposed to feel under your fingers. And maybe once you've written out and practiced this for, like I said, 5 or 6 tunes, then you could start to try to spontaneously do it while checking yourself. So I'm going to transition to my iPad here, and here's the general rules. As a starter, I recommend trying with 5 notes. So you're going to have one note's going to be the root of the chord, or the bass note. Sometimes I guess you might be playing an inversion. One note will be the melody. And this gets confusing for some people. So when we're taking the melody, we're only thinking about the melody note that happens concurrently with the chord change. Okay? So all the other melody notes, of course, are important, but we're not really going to worry about them in terms of forming our voicing. We're only thinking about that melody note that happens right with the chord change. And then we have 3 notes of our choosing. Like most voicings, the 7th and the 3rd are really important. Of course, there are some exceptions. You know, we have 6 chords in which the 6th replaces the 7th, or sometimes we have sus chords where the 4th replaces the 3rd. But the 7th and the 3rd generally should be in there. And then you can fill in whatever you have left with color notes. And I gave you a little handy dandy diagram over on the right side here. You kind of have 3 main choices for major 7th chords, 3 main choices for minor 7th chords, and then really a heck of a lot of choices for dominant 7th chords because we can create these altered dominant sounds. Of course, there are other chords that aren't covered here, but I can't cover every single chord type right now. Again, the book's going to have more information for that kind of thing. As I mentioned, you want to avoid doublings. And what I mean by doublings is where possible, you don't want to have 2 Fs, 2 Ds, 2 E flats, 2 B flats. And there's 2 reasons for this. One is that the more notes you double, the fewer fingers you're going to have to play different notes, so you're not going to have as much color. But then the second one is that acoustically, it actually kind of shuts down the ringing of the notes. So you really want to stick to just one note. Now, there are a few times where you're not going to be able to avoid doublings. The main one is if you have the root of the chord in the melody, right? If you have E flat as the melody note on an E flat major chord, then what are you going to do? You're going to have that doubling. One other exception, and again, you can read more about this in the book, is if the 3rd of the chord is in a high register, we really miss the sound of having that in the lower register. So when the 3rd is up high, we will frequently double that 3rd a little bit lower. And then here, you want to aim for relatively even spacing. Of course, you're not going to have all of the same intervals, but what you don't want to have is, a cluster on the top and then no notes in between, right? The whole point of this is that we're going to kind of fill in the middle between the melody and the bass of the chord in order to create a really well-rounded, very resonant voice. So I'm going to show you kind of in detail how this process works. And so this is the melody and the chord progression for the tune Misty. And so let's dive in. And so the first choice that you have to make with every chord is where you put the bass. And as a rule of thumb, you want to put the bass as low as you can play it while still being able to kind of get to the rest of the chord. So this bass is going to be high if we put the E flat kind of right beneath middle C. So I would go an octave down from there. And I'm going to just ask for all of your patience in the world with my handwriting here. I'm going to do my best. So now the melody note, this D here, that's the 7th of the chord, right? So we don't need another 7th. We don't want to add a doubling. So our first step should probably be to put the 3rd in. And so we have 2 Gs. We can put it right next to that E flat. We hear that that's a really low interval. And we have a thing in piano music called lower interval limits, which means that as we get lower in the register, we need to make our intervals bigger. And this is too low for those lower interval limits. So I think our G has to be up here. Again, the first G below middle C. I'm going to write that in the right hand because it's playable in the right hand, and so that's probably what we're going to end up doing. So now we have 2 color notes to add. And you can remember from our chart, maybe you can, maybe you can't, I can remember from our chart that basically on major chords we have the 5th, the 9th, and the 13th as options. Did I say that right? Yeah, I did. So if we put the 5th up here, you can see we're starting to form a very imbalanced voicing with all this space in between. So I'm going to recommend that we put the 5th in the left hand. And now we could either add the 13th, and that could go below or above. They both sound good, or we could add the 9th. I think I like the sound of the 9th right there the best, personally. So that's going to be an F, a G, and a D. So we're going to have 2 notes in the left hand, 3 in the right hand. And you can see that we have quite a few different options as we're doing this. It's not the kind of thing where there's only one right answer per chord. You're going to be able to come up with some different voicing options as you do this. Okay? Good. So we have... And I'm going to go back to the other camera view for just a second so that you can see how I'm playing this. I'm using what I call a corner thumb to play this F and the G, because I'm trying to make this melody as smooth as possible so I can play it legato with my upper few fingers while hitting the F and the G with the corner thumb. There's going to be a lot of stretching as you play this, and that is just part of the style. There's not really a lot to do about this. And there are going to be moments, probably, where we're going to write tenths in the left hand. And I know not everybody can reach a tenth. And I can only reach some of my tenths. I can reach black key to black key, white key to a white key, but I can't really cleanly reach a black key to a white key. Excuse me. So you can always do a quick roll. If I were going to go, do a quick, clean roll. And you can always do that instead of playing the tenth. All right, let's go on to this next chord. So we could put our B flat here, which is okay, or we could put it down there, which is also okay. Let's go ahead, let's aim for the higher B flat this time. Now we have the 3rd in the melody, right? This D flat. Remember, we're only considering the melody note concurrent with the chord change. By the way, I'll zoom out so you can see that this is a B flat minor 7 chord. Okay, so we've got the 3rd, we need the 7th. There's literally only one place where we can put the 7th. I'm going to write it in the right hand because it's playable there. Actually, we'll talk about that in a second. So then we have the 5th, the 11th, and the 9th as potential options, and they would all actually really work pretty nicely. So I'm going to choose the 5th and the 9th to make a nice, rich voicing. And I could justify playing this a bunch of different ways in terms of how I divide it between the hands. You can see that this melody leaps up a ton from the end of one, or sorry, from beat one to the end of one. So you could actually grab this whole chord with your left hand. I'll go to the different camera so you can see I'm playing all of it. Or, man, I'm getting really self-conscious about my fingering now. You could also just use the pedal to hold the chord here. I'm open to different ways dividing that one between the hands, I think. All right, and then we have another chord, so we have to change. So we have this E flat 7 here. So we're gonna go down to this E flat. And now we have the 13th as our melody note. The C is the 13th. So we're gonna need both the 3rd and the 7th. And I do like to see if there are ways we can make good voice leading between one chord and the other. If you're not familiar with that term voice leading, it means simply making smooth resolutions, as though a different singer were singing each note of the chord so that they could find an adjacent note to sing. So for example, I want this A flat to go down to G, so I'm probably gonna put this G here. And then let's see, so then we also need the 7th. So now here's the thing, I can't physically play this, and I can't physically reach from the C to the G with my right hand, so I think that the 7th has to go up here. I was trying to see if I could play anything if that 7th were in blue there. I don't think it really works. So now I've got the 3rd and the 7th, and I can add one more note. So for a dominant chord, I have lots of options for what that last note would be. You know, maybe a flat 9th would be nice here. I could add that in the right hand. It would technically be an F flat, but if you want to write an E, I don't mind. So now we have. Okay, now we're going to resolve to this A flat major. This is the 3rd in the melody, right? So we need the 7th. Literally only one G in between those two notes. So we're going to put it here. Sorry, my flat is really messy. I will rewrite that for you. And now we can put in two color tones. Now, look at what happens, just to demonstrate, if I try to put in the 5th and the 13th. I would end up with this chord, which isn't bad, but it's a little clustery in the middle, right? So maybe it's better to put in the 13th and the 9th. We could put in the 9th right here. And notice, and I'll go back to this camera so you can see my fingers, there's no way that I can start playing this next melody line without picking up that chord. And so I'm using a combination of pedal, but sometimes I also just am going to let that go. So I don't have to hear that chord necessarily for all 4 beats. If it starts to be picked up, I think that's okay. Going on to this next measure, I'm going to write in the root for the A flat minor. Okay, and this is the 9th in the melody. I know this is a little bit of a cumbersome process, but you'll get faster and faster. So it's the 9th in the melody, so we need the 7th and the 3rd. 3rd's probably too low there, so I think it's going to need to be up here. And let's look at where we're coming from. So we were here. I prefer to have the 7th here. And I'm realizing that it's probably more convenient to play this 3rd in the right hand rather than the left hand, since that's an easy reach. Okay, so now I have a minor 7th, so I could add in the 5th or the 9th, or the 11th. I'm gonna add in the 5th in the right hand. And with these color tones, I would just trial and error. The 11th would have sounded fine here. The 9th is already in the melody, so you're not going to add that. So you can see that I can find these chords quickly because I've done this forever. So now we have the 13th in the melody. It's a dominant 7th chord. I'm looking at this voice leading again, and the clear winner for where the 3rd and the 7th should be is that we should go down, let that G flat lead to the F, and then let that that C flat stay as a C flat. So now we have one color tone to add. I think let's add in a sharp 9 this time. That would be a F flat. I like that a lot. Okay, we're cruising along. I'll write in the bass note. So here's a moment where we have the root in the melody. And so this is a moment where we're not going to be able to avoid doublings, right? You're just gonna have a G on top as well as a G on bottom. So I need my 3rd and 7th. And again, I'm gonna kind of look to that past chord. And I'm gonna see we could keep this F. That C flat can go down to a B flat. And now we have an opportunity to add one color note. Maybe having the 5th in the right hand would help to fill this out. I think I like the 5th the best. That chord bothers me because you can hear it's kind of devoid of color because it's just got the root, the 3rd, the 7th, the 5th. It's not really the most colorful chord. But I think we should go with it. Gonna add in the root. Okay, I've got the 3rd in the melody now. So we need the 7th. We can keep this B flat from before, so I think we should totally do it. And now I can add 2 color notes. Well, now I'm thinking that I want the root to be a little bit higher. Because what I want to do is I want to add in the 11th and the 5th. And one reason I'm not adding in the 9th here is that with the 3rd in the melody, if we use the 9th, it's going to create this interval, which is 1/2 step more than an octave. It's a minor 9th. And typically we're going to avoid that interval. You know, it's on a case-by-case basis. Thelonious Monk happens to love that interval. But usually if we're kind of trying to play pretty, we don't want that minor 9th interval. The other thing that I could do here, that 9th does work if I nestle it right up against the 3rd. Now we're not creating a 1/2 step instead of a minor 9th interval. So I don't mind that one. I think either voicing would be okay. But yeah, if I tried to put the root down here, then I either end up with a big space or I end up with that minor 9th interval. So that's why I moved that root higher. All right, F minor 3rd is in the melody again. So we need to add the 7th of the F minor. I guess we could put it here. And now maybe we could add the 5th and the 11th down into the right hand. I know I'm not doing a good job keeping track of where there's half notes. Hope you guys are starting to get this. Again, we have the 3rd, but now we have a dominant chord. So let's put the 7th here because it kind of continues on from some notes that were in that previous chord. And now we have 2 color tones. So let's add in the 5th and the flat 9th. Oh, I did that in blue, but I think everybody's okay with that. We're almost there. So we've got the root in the melody. So we are gonna have to double that in the bass. And now, based on where we're coming from, we want the 7th to be here. 3rd can be here. Let's add in a flat 5. We haven't added in an altered 5th yet. Now we're we're going around the circle of fifths, so we should be able to make really nice, smooth connections. Oh, I forgot to go back to this iPad view. I'm sorry. Hopefully this helps you see it a little bit more clearly. F is going to E. B will move to B flat. And then we could keep this D flat as now it becomes the flat 9 of the C7. And then these are going to keep moving down. Whenever I'm writing in blue, I'm trying to show you where I'm thinking about voice leading, the connections between the chords that are possible. And this D flat over here actually really wants to resolve to that C. So, listen for those resolutions. And then lastly, we'll go this B flat 7. And again, I'm just going to kind of try to follow this voice leading as much as possible, go to the very next note, just a half step away from most of these chords. So let me play this for you. And I'm going to do it twice, actually. I'm going to do it once so that you can watch the notes, and then I'm going to do it once so that you can watch my hands. Because these are somewhat difficult to play because you want to hold on to these chords for as long as possible if you're not too reliant on the pedal. But I want you to just see how this sounds first. Let me see if I can make it just a little bigger for you. Okay, here we go. There's that sharp 9. So you can watch my hands. Feeling the pressure. Feeling the pressure. Demonstrate a few styles of solo piano playing, all covered in the book, Playing Solo Jazz Piano, Jeremy Siskind, that you can, kind of take this and transform it. The easiest one is what I call the repeated quarter note ballad. And in this style, you're going to take notes kind of beneath middle C. I often use the thumb of my left hand or the thumb of my right hand, and you're just going to repeat them in rhythm. So it's going to be... exact voicings here. This is a pretty professional level ballad. I'll play ballads like this on recitals, definitely as background music. And the book covers all kinds of ways that you can dress that up even more. Or you could do what I call the stop-start rubato ballad, where you play a phrase of this and then make your own improvised commentary. So... So that's a really nice way to use these. You could also use it in a swing setting by separating out the different elements. from the chords and the bass. You could also separate the bass. That you could do to dress that up as well, but that's kind of the basic idea. So once you have this outline, we call it a melody harmonization of the melody plus these shared hand voicings. There's so many different things that you could do with it. I'll give you another style. It's kind of an ECM Bossa E ballad. Same exact chords, the same voicings, however you do it. So that's kind of a summary of shared hands voicings. This is a style that you could, of course, spend weeks, months, years pursuing. But I hope that at least gets you started, maybe answers some questions for those of you who have already gone through the book. But the best thing to do is to buy my book, of course. It's called Playing Solo Jazz Piano. The best place to buy it is jeremysiskind.com. Because if you buy it from Amazon, that's fantastic, but they take about half of the money. So I'll be very happy to ship you a book. Please like, subscribe my channel, share it with your friends. I'm going to keep posting great videos. See y'all later.